Most men are taught from a very early age that strength is defined by how unshakable, untouchable, and unbothered they appear. They grow up believing that the essence of being a man lies in having an armor so thick that no pain, no fear, and no uncertainty can pierce it. They wear this armor in their relationships, in their conversations, and even in the way they love. They believe that women admire the image of perfection. A man who always has the answers, who never falters, who never lets emotions spill over. But what they don't realize is that while a woman may respect your strength, she will only love the parts of you that are human. She does not fall in love with the mask you present to the world. She falls in love with the truth you dare to reveal when the mask comes off. When you meet a woman, you may think that showing her your confidence, your success, your wit, and your charm will be enough to win her heart. And for a moment, it might work. She might admire the polish, the charisma, the way you carry yourself like someone who knows exactly where he's going. But beneath the surface, she is not looking for a flawless statue of strength. She is searching for the man who is brave enough to stand before her, naked in spirit, unguarded, and open. Because here is the paradox: perfection may impress her, but vulnerability is what will capture her heart. There is a myth men carry deep in their minds that vulnerability equals weakness, that if they show fear, insecurity, or pain, they will lose respect. Yet the opposite is true. A woman is not drawn to you because you are untouchable. She is drawn to you because she can touch the raw, unpolished, and genuine truth within you. Think about it. When you are always trying to be strong, always trying to be in control, always holding everything together, you are not actually letting her in. You are performing. And performances might entertain, but they never create intimacy. When you dare to break the illusion of strength without vulnerability, something profound happens. She no longer sees a man trying to convince the world of who he is. She sees a man comfortable enough to reveal who he truly is. And that is where trust begins. Because if you can show her your fears without shame, if you can share your doubts without hiding, if you can admit that you don't always have the answers, you create a safe space for her to do the same. You invite her into a relationship where both of you can put down the masks, both of you can exhale, and both of you can rest in the truth that love was never meant to be a stage. It was meant to be a sanctuary. The reason many relationships crumble is because men confuse dominance with depth. They think, if I just show her how strong I am, she will stay. But women do not stay for strength alone. They stay for connection. And connection is impossible without vulnerability. Imagine two people sitting across from each other, both armored, both guarded, both smiling, but never revealing what's really happening inside. That is not intimacy. That is distance disguised as closeness. Real love demands that one of you dares to put the armor down first. Real love begins the moment you risk showing her the part of you that trembles, the part of you that doubts, the part of you that has scars. Strength is not the absence of fear. It is the courage to admit fear and still move forward. Strength is not never falling. It is getting back up and telling the truth about the fall. And when you share that truth with her, when you let her see not just the victory, but also the battle, she feels closer to you. Because she, too, has fears. She, too, has scars. She, too, carries doubts in her heart. And by showing her yours, you give her silent permission to share hers. That is the bond that grows into unshakable love. The bond of two people who stop pretending and start existing as they truly are. Think about the moments in your life when someone really touched your soul. It was never when they were acting perfect. It was when they let their tears fall, when they admitted they were lost, when they whispered a truth they were afraid to say out loud. That's when you leaned in. That's when you felt your heart open. And a woman is no different. She will lean into you. She will soften into you, not when you stand tall like an unmovable wall, but when you dare to let that wall crack just enough for her to see your humanity. This is why men who hide behind toughness often find their relationships lack depth. Because love does not flow where there is no access. If your heart is behind steel, she may admire the fortress, but she cannot step inside. When you finally understand that vulnerability is not weakness, but rather the purest form of strength, you unlock the key to her heart. She will not love the version of you that performs. She will love the version of you that is real. And if you want her love in its deepest, most enduring form, you must be willing to break the illusion of invincibility and stand before her exactly as you are, unguarded, flawed, and true. Every woman you meet carries a story that you cannot see with your eyes. She may smile brightly, laugh freely, and appear as though life has treated her kindly, But beneath that surface often lies a fortress built from experiences that left scars. These walls are not there by accident. They are the result of pain, of disappointment, of trust once given too quickly or to the wrong hands. They are her way of protecting the most delicate parts of her heart. And as a man who wishes to love her deeply, you cannot simply demand that those walls crumble. You cannot command her to trust, to open, to surrender. That is not how her soul works. If you want her to let you in, you must first show her that you are willing to take down your own walls. Men, too, carry invisible barriers. You have been told to keep your pride intact, to never show weakness, to be the provider, the rock, the unshakable force. That conditioning creates its own kind of armor, an armor of ego, of control, of distance. You might think that this shield is what keeps a woman safe, but the truth is, it often pushes her further away. She cannot trust a man who only shows her his polished side, because somewhere in her soul she knows it isn't the full picture. She knows there are shadows you haven't revealed, fears you haven't admitted, truths you keep locked away. And if you cannot tear down your own walls, how can you ever expect her to tear down hers? The beginning of true intimacy lies in courage, not control. Courage to take off the mask, courage to show the cracks, courage to say, I don't always have it together. When a woman sees you break your own walls, when she witnesses you putting aside pride, dropping the facade of perfection, and allowing her to glimpse the man beneath, something powerful begins to shift inside of her. Those protective barriers she has carried for years suddenly don't feel so necessary. She realizes she is not the only one carrying wounds, and in that recognition, trust begins to grow. Her walls may look like silence, hesitation, or distance. She may pull back when you get close, not because she doesn't want love, but because she fears what will happen if she lets it in. She may test you, question your consistency, or hold you at arm's length. But this is not rejection. This is her way of asking, are you real? Can I trust you with my heart? Will you still be here if I show you the parts of me I usually hide? And the only way you can answer those questions is not through words alone, but through your willingness to meet her where she is by breaking yourself open first. It is easy to ask someone else to be vulnerable while you remain protected. It is easy to tell her, open up to me, while you continue to guard your own soul. But that is not leadership, that is hypocrisy. True leadership in love means you go first. You take the risk. You demonstrate by action that safety exists here. You reveal your doubts, your insecurities, your past mistakes, not to burden her, but to show her that you are not afraid of truth. And when you do this, when you allow her to witness your humanity, you build a bridge that her walls cannot resist forever. There is a deep irony in relationships that most men miss. The more you try to control, the more resistance you create. The more you try to force her walls down, the higher and stronger they become. But when you stop trying to control her and instead focus on controlling yourself, on dismantling your pride, softening your ego, surrendering your need to always look strong, you create the environment where her walls naturally begin to fall. Because love is not built on force, it is built on safety. And safety is born from authenticity. Consider for a moment what happens when you meet someone who is unapologetically themselves. They don't try to impress you. They don't try to hide their imperfections. They simply show up as they are. That presence relaxes you, doesn't it? It makes you feel like you can put your guard down, too. The same principle applies here. When you break your own walls, you silently tell her, you don't have to hide with me. You don't have to pretend. I am not here to judge you. I am here to know you. And those words, spoken through action, are what slowly dismantle the barriers around her heart. This is why some men spend years with a woman and never truly touch her soul, while others step into her life and within months feel as though they have known her forever. It is not about time. It is about depth. It is about how willing you are to take the risk of being seen for who you truly are. The man who dares to break his own walls is the man who gains access to parts of her that no one else has ever reached. And that access is not given casually. It is sacred. It is rare. And it is reserved only for the one who proves through his own vulnerability that he is worthy of it. When you take down your walls, you are not losing strength. You are showing the highest form of it. Because any man can hide behind pride and ego. That is easy. But it takes true courage to let another human being see your soul. It takes courage to say, this is me without the armor, without the mask. This is who I am, and I trust you enough to let you see it. That act alone is often the very thing that breaks her walls without you ever needing to push. Because love is not about demanding her surrender. It is about earning it through the surrender you show. First love has never been a game of safety. Safety feels comfortable, predictable, and easy, but love was never designed to be easy. It was designed to be transformative. And transformation requires risk. To truly connect with a woman, to have her not just admire you but deeply love you, you must be willing to take emotional risks. That means stepping into places where rejection is possible, where your honesty may be misunderstood, where your truth may shake her in ways she wasn't expecting. But this is exactly what ignites the fire of intimacy. When you risk opening your heart, when you dare to stand fully revealed without guarantees, you invite her into a depth of connection that most people will never experience in their lifetime. Most men avoid risk when it comes to emotions. They'll take risks in business, in sports, even in dangerous adventures, but when it comes to opening their soul to a woman, they hesitate. They fear the look in her eyes if she doesn't understand. They fear the silence that might follow after they reveal something raw. They fear the possibility that she might walk away. And so, they choose safety. They keep conversations surface level. They show her the charming exterior. They share only the parts of themselves that feel polished and acceptable. But here's the truth. Safety may prevent pain, but it also prevents intimacy. If you are unwilling to risk rejection, you are also unwilling to experience real love. Women can sense when you are holding back. They can feel when you're telling them what you think they want to hear instead of what's really inside your heart. They can feel when you're playing it safe. And while politeness, charm, and surface-level connection might earn you her attention, they will never capture her devotion. What captivates her soul is not your perfection, but your willingness to walk into the unknown with her. She doesn't want the script, she wants the truth. She doesn't want the performance, she wants the man who is brave enough to be unscripted. And that bravery is revealed when you take the emotional risk of breaking through her defenses with honesty so unfiltered that she has no choice but to lean in and feel. The risk you take is not in shouting louder or trying harder. It is in being real. It is telling her what you feel without disguising it in clever words. It is admitting that you are afraid to lose her. It is confessing the times when life has humbled you. It is revealing your deepest values, even when you don't know how she will respond. And when you do this, when you step into that space of uncertainty with courage, you give her permission to trust the depth of her own emotions. She will only meet you at the level you are willing to go yourself. If you stay at the surface, she will remain there too. But if you dare to risk diving into the deeper waters, she will follow, because in her heart, she has been waiting for a man who is not afraid to swim where most only wade. There is an undeniable power in emotional risk. When you risk being misunderstood, you create the possibility of being understood in ways that transform both of you. When you risk being rejected, you create the possibility of being accepted fully without conditions. And when you risk breaking her defenses with your authenticity, you create the possibility of a love that is raw, unpolished, and unbreakable. Think of the moments in history that moved humanity forward. They did not happen because someone chose safety. They happened because someone took a risk. The same principle applies to love. Safety builds routines, but risk builds connection. A woman is not drawn to a man who hides behind his armor. She is drawn to the man who knows the risk of lowering his shield but does it anyway. Because in that act, he proves something deeper than strength. He proves devotion. She knows that if you are willing to risk your pride, your image, even your comfort for the sake of truth, then you will not run when life tests the relationship. You will not disappear at the first sign of difficulty. You will not choose the easy road when the hard road is what love demands. That assurance does not come from promises. It comes from the risks you are willing to take. Emotional risk also means breaking the patterns of silence. Too many men withhold what they truly feel, thinking it will protect them from conflict. But silence only builds distance. A woman would rather hear your messy truth than live in the emptiness of your quiet. She would rather know your fears than guess at your thoughts. She would rather walk with you in the uncertainty of honesty than feel alone in the comfort of your silence. That is the paradox of love. What you fear will push her away is often what brings her closer. When you risk opening your heart, you are not just giving her a gift. You are giving yourself freedom. Freedom from the prison of perfection. Freedom from the weight of always performing. Freedom from the fear that if she really knew you, she would walk away. Because when you risk showing her everything and she chooses to stay, you realize that love is not about being flawless. It's about being fearless enough to be real. And in that space, love stops being fragile. because it is no longer built on illusion. It is built on truth, and truth can withstand anything. This is why emotional risk is the gateway to lasting love. You can buy her flowers, you can take her on trips, you can shower her with gestures, but if you never risk letting her see the depths of your soul, she will always feel something is missing. She does not need you to be perfect. She needs you to be present. She does not need you to never fall. She needs you to trust her enough to show her the scars from where you have fallen before. And that level of risk, though terrifying, is the very thing that breaks through her defenses and allows her to finally believe that your love is real. When you step into the heart of a woman, you will quickly realize that love is not given freely without being tested. Her resistance is not a sign of rejection, it is a sign of caution. She wants to know if your love is genuine, if your presence is lasting, if your words carry weight, or if they are just echoes of temporary passion. This is where most men fail. They mistake her hesitation for disinterest, when in reality, she is simply measuring the consistency of your spirit. A woman who has lived through disappointment knows that anyone can show up once. Anyone can say the right words in the heat of the moment. Anyone can make promises under the glow of romance. But she also knows that very few can stand steady when the excitement fades and real life begins to unfold. This is why consistency becomes the key to breaking her resistance. A woman does not open her heart because of a single grand gesture. She opens her heart because of the small, steady actions that prove your intentions over time. She pays attention to whether your words match your deeds. She notices if you listen when she speaks, not just once, but every time. She watches if you keep your promises, no matter how small they are. It is not the intensity of your feelings in a fleeting moment that earns her trust. It is the rhythm of your presence day after day, the reliability of your character when no one is watching, the way you show up not just when it is convenient, but also when it is difficult. Her resistance is like a locked door, and your consistency is the key that slowly turns the lock. If you try to push the door open with force, it will not budge, and even if it does, the damage will remain. But if you are patient, if you keep showing up with authenticity, if you allow your actions to speak louder than your declarations, she will feel the door of her heart begin to shift on its own. That is the power of consistency. It does not demand, it does not pressure. It gently dissolves resistance until there is nothing left to defend against. A woman may test you, and these tests are not games. They are her way of asking, are you who you say you are? Will you still be here when the sparkle fades? Can I trust that your love is not just words, but a way of being? She may challenge you with her silence, with her doubts, with her guarded reactions. In those moments, most men grow frustrated and retreat. They say, why isn't she opening up? Why is she so difficult? But what they don't realize is that her hesitation is not to push them away. It is to see who has the strength to stay. She is not impressed by the man who demands quick access to her heart. She is moved by the man who patiently proves he is safe enough to let in. Consistency is not about perfection. It is not about never making mistakes, never faltering, never getting it wrong. It is about returning again and again with honesty, with effort, with sincerity. It is about apologizing when you stumble, about showing humility when you fall short, about continuing to show up even after moments of weakness. Because what she is really looking for is not a flawless man, but a dependable one. Someone who will not vanish when it gets inconvenient, someone who will not run when life throws challenges, someone who has the resilience to remain steady even when the winds of life blow hard. Think of it this way: love is like water flowing against stone. At first, the stone resists. It is solid, unmoved, unyielding. But water, through its persistence, shapes even the hardest rock, not because it is forceful, but because it is constant. That is how consistency works in love. It does not break her down violently. It reshapes her resistance gently, steadily, until her heart is no longer afraid to surrender. She begins to see that your presence is not seasonal, that your love is not circumstantial, that your commitment is not fragile. And with that realization, her heart begins to soften in ways it never could under pressure or force. This is why you cannot rush a woman's trust. You cannot demand her vulnerability on your timeline. If you try to push her too soon, you will confirm her fears rather than ease them. But if you are patient, if you allow your consistency to do the work, she will open on her own terms. And when she does, it will not be out of obligation. It will be out of genuine faith in the love you have proven over time. That kind of love cannot be shaken easily because it is not built on words alone. It is built on a foundation that has been tested and proven. So many men are focused on the moment they win a woman's affection, But the truth is, winning her heart is not about one moment. It is about every moment. It is about showing her through repetition that you are who you say you are, that your love is not just an emotional high, but a conscious choice you make again and again. And when she sees that consistency, when she feels that your love is not fleeting, but enduring, her resistance falls, not because you forced it to, but because you created a space where it no longer served her to keep it up. Consistency is the language of trust, and trust is the gateway to her deepest love. The man who masters this truth understands that love is not earned through intensity, but through reliability, not through promises, but through proof, not through grand displays, but through the steady presence that remains long after the initial spark has faded. Fear is one of the greatest obstacles to love, yet it is often invisible. Both men and women carry it, though it may take different forms. For some, fear shows up as the inability to trust, a constant worry that if they let their guard down, they will be abandoned. For others, it shows up as jealousy, a belief that they are not enough, that someone better will come along and replace them. For many, fear is hidden in silence, in the refusal to speak their true thoughts or reveal their true emotions, because they are terrified of what might happen if they do. These fears are not born overnight. They are often carried from childhood, from heartbreaks, from betrayals, from the wounds of the past. And unless they are faced head on, they form an unbreakable cycle that repeats itself in every relationship, leaving love trapped behind bars of doubt. When you step into a woman's life, you are not just meeting her smile, her laughter, and her beauty. You are also meeting the fears she has carried silently for years. She may never speak of them directly, but they live in her hesitations, in the moments she pulls away when you get too close, in the questions she asks that sound casual, but are loaded with weight. She wants to know, will you leave like others have left? Will you betray her like others have betrayed? Will you see her fully and still decide she is enough? These questions may never be spoken out loud, but they echo loudly in her heart. And if you want to truly love her, you must understand that your role is not to ignore these fears, not to minimize them, but to break the cycle that created them. Breaking the cycle of fear does not mean convincing her with words that everything will be fine. Words alone cannot dismantle fears that have been reinforced by years of disappointment. What breaks fear is action, presence, and courage. When you respond with patience instead of frustration, when you remain steady in moments where her fear causes her to doubt, when you choose to stay, even when it would be easier to walk away, you begin to rewrite the narrative that her fear has been telling her for years. You show her that not every man leaves, not every man betrays, not every man hides behind pride. You demonstrate through the way you love that fear does not have to win this time. But before you can help her break free, you must confront your own fears, because men carry their own cycles of fear too. Many men are afraid of not being enough, afraid of failing as providers, afraid of losing control, afraid of vulnerability. These fears often manifest in anger, withdrawal, or control. And unless you recognize them, you will unconsciously project them onto her. If you fear vulnerability, you will criticize hers. If you fear rejection, you will interpret her hesitation as disinterest and retreat. If you fear failure, you will push yourself into roles of dominance rather than connection. This is why breaking the cycle of fear must begin with you. Only when you face your own shadows can you help her dismantle hers. When you break your own cycle of fear, you create an environment where she feels safe to face hers. She sees that you are not running from your insecurities, and in that courage, she finds permission to lower her guard. Fear thrives in secrecy, but it dissolves in the light of truth. When you are willing to speak your fears out loud, you show her that it is possible to love without pretending. You show her that fear does not have to control the relationship, that it can be acknowledged without being surrendered to. And in that honesty, the cycle begins to weaken. Breaking the cycle also requires consistency. One act of bravery cannot erase years of conditioning. Just as fear is reinforced by repetition, so is love. When you repeatedly choose courage over control, patience over anger, honesty over silence, you slowly reprogram not only your own patterns, but hers as well. She begins to realize that this time is different, that this relationship is not built on fear, but on faith. That realization does not come instantly. It is a slow unfolding, a gradual softening, but it is also the most powerful transformation love can create. There is something extraordinary about being the one who breaks the cycle. It means you are not just loving her in the present, you are healing parts of her past. You are showing her that love can be safe, that intimacy does not always lead to pain, that vulnerability does not have to end in regret. And in doing so, you also change the future, because the love you build without fear becomes the foundation for everything that comes after. It becomes the example she believes in, the memory she carries, the proof that love can be stronger than the wounds of the past. Fear will always try to whisper its lies into the quiet moments of love. It will say you are not enough, that she will leave, that it cannot last. But courage answers those lies not with denial, but with presence. You do not need to silence fear. You need to stand taller than it. And when she sees you do that, when she feels you choose faith over fear again and again, her heart begins to trust in ways it never has before. Because what she truly desires is not a man who never feels fear, but a man who refuses to be ruled by it. That is the kind of man who breaks cycles, who heals wounds, and who creates a love that no fear can destroy when a woman finally allows you to break her. It is not about destruction. It is about transformation. Her walls, her doubts, her fears, her resistance, those are not who she truly is. They are layers built over time, defenses she created to protect the most vulnerable parts of herself. When you reach the point where those defenses begin to fall, what you are really doing is helping her return to her truest self, the self she often hides because the world has not always been kind to it. And that process of breaking is not violent. It is tender, it is patient, it is the kind of breaking that leads to building something far stronger than what existed before. Think about how the most precious materials on earth are formed. Diamonds are created under immense pressure. Gold is refined through fire. Pearls are born out of irritation within an oyster. The beauty does not exist without the breaking, without the process that strips away what is unnecessary and reveals what is valuable. The same is true in love. When she allows you to break through the barriers she has lived behind, you are witnessing a sacred moment. You are being trusted with the parts of her that very few, if any, have ever seen. And in that trust, you are given the responsibility not to harm, but to build. The breaking that leads to building begins with your presence. It is not about saying the perfect words or knowing the perfect moves. It is about showing up with authenticity so consistently that she begins to believe you are safe. At first, her walls may tremble but remain. She may let you in halfway, only to retreat again. This is not weakness. It is a natural response to years of conditioning. But every time you remain steady, every time you refuse to withdraw just because she hesitates, you chip away at the weight of her doubt. Slowly, she begins to risk more. Slowly, she lets you see her deeper truths. Slowly, she begins to surrender, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. And when that surrender happens, when she finally lets you break through, the love that emerges is no longer fragile. Fragile love is built on illusion, on masks, on surface connection. But the love that comes after breaking is raw, unpolished, and unshakable. It is built on truth. She no longer has to pretend, no longer has to hold back, no longer has to live behind the walls that kept her distant. And in that space of honesty, she gives you her entire heart. That is the kind of love most men will never experience because they are too afraid to go deep enough to reach it. Breaking her barriers also means breaking your own. You cannot expect her to bare her soul if you are still hiding behind your armor. This mutual breaking creates a bond that nothing superficial can match. It is in the shared vulnerability, the shared fears, the shared confessions that love takes root in fertile ground. She will not just love you because of what you give her. She will love you because of what you build together in that raw, honest space. This is the foundation that lasts beyond passion, beyond attraction, beyond the initial rush of chemistry. This is the foundation that sustains love when storms come, because storms will come. And when they do, a love built on masks will collapse, but a love built on truth will endure. The beauty of this breaking is that it creates freedom. She is no longer imprisoned by her doubts, and you are no longer imprisoned by your need to appear invincible. Both of you can breathe fully for the first time. Both of you can rest in the knowledge that you are loved not for the image you project, but for who you truly are. That freedom is rare. Most relationships never reach it because both people are too afraid to break, too afraid to reveal what lies underneath. But when it happens, when both of you surrender, it creates a union that feels less like holding on and more like being carried together by something greater than yourselves. There is also a deep intimacy that comes only after breaking. Before, you may share moments, conversations, touches, but there is always a layer of distance. Afterward, nothing stands between you. She looks at you with a softness that only comes when trust has been fully given. She speaks to you with a truth she has never spoken to anyone else. She loves you with a depth that is not performative, not conditional, not fleeting. It is the kind of love that roots itself so deeply that even time cannot erode it. The breaking that leads to building is not about tearing her down. It is about tearing down everything that kept her from being fully known. It is about creating space where her soul can stand in the open and feel safe. It is about building a love so real that it does not need to be defended, only nurtured. And when you reach this level with a woman, when she knows she can give you her whole self and still be cherished, she does not just love you. She belongs to you in the deepest, most profound sense of the word. That is the power of breaking through, not to destroy, but to rebuild something that will stand unshaken through anything life places in its path.